is overtime here at Old Favorite Friday, and I am joined by my partner, literally my partner at Barrel Amongst Brewing, Bill McFee, and it would be a crime, Bill, a crime not to bring you in for an Old Favorite Friday that features a Belgian brewery in the United States, an Ommegang, one of the best Belgian-style breweries in the country.
No doubt.
And Schoof, a true Belgian brewery, a brewery that you absolutely love.
Yeah.
So we have the meeting of the minds, incredible breweries making a Belgian-style beer that once upon a time, it's been around for almost 13 years now. It was introduced in 2011 from my research.
Okay.
It is now listed on the website as a year-round beer, which was completely shocking. It's in a 16-ounce tallboy can. It's a Belgian blonde ale, around 9% alcohol. Bill, what are you thinking about this beer?
Well,
do you have any memories of this beer from back in the day?
I don't have a lot. I have had this beer before, but it's been a while. I just remember, of course, Ommegang and Schoof are both owned by Duvel Mortgott, and so that's obviously why they work together on this. And I remember when this came out, and I had it then, and I liked it then very much. So I'm about to revisit it and remember. So here we go.
He's tasting it really for the first time on camera. There's no ropes here. We're on the high wire. I will jump out and say this is listed as a Belgian-style blonde ale. It's 9.5% alcohol. I had not had this beer in a long time. I remember having it in the old Bombers. I think it was Cork and Cage.
It was.
And I was just expecting, even at 9.5%, more of a straw-colored listing as a blonde. I'm looking more golden. I mean, this guy has a lot of triple condentations to it. Really phenolic.
It is.
Spice forward. I mean, beautifully made, beautifully dry. This drinks like an authentic Belgian, but now that you've had a chance to sip it, Bill, where you at?
That's what I get also from it, is the phenolic character from, which I'm sure is from the yeast. And it's got a fair amount of hop bitterness in it, but just balanced just enough to knock off the sweetness. And I mean, if you gave me this beer blind and said, what would you call this style-wise, I'd be tempted to call it a triple. But they call it a strong blonde or strong pale, I think sometimes it's listed as. But
it's listed here on the can as a blonde ale.
Okay.
And listen, I understand that. We've run into this situation many times. We are a Belgian-inspired brewery. For anyone, if you're here on Barrel Amongst's, social media accounts and you don't know that we are a Belgian-inspired brewery, I don't know why you're here. But the fact is, we've run into this with, styles like triple, maybe not translating to everybody in the craft beer, universe in the United States, of trying to label beers in a different way. A long time ago, we labeled our blonde ale as a single because it's a Belgian single, but people didn't really understand it.
Right.
So we now market it as a blonde ale. So I get playing with some of this terminology. I've seen this before back in the day at Funky Buddha. Is it a Hefeweizen? Is it a wheat beer? Does anyone know what a Hefeweizen is? We had those internal conversations.
And I will say that I think the Belgians are, I always found them, I'll say notorious, but well known for the fact that they really could give two shoots about the style that they call this beer.
And as you can hear, there's someone calling right now trying to give us some information.
Absolutely.
They're really interested in Old Favorite Friday. They want to make sure that they can weigh in. We'll get to you later on. We don't take calls on this show, unlike Drive Time Radio. But back to what we're talking about with this beer. So if you want to call this a triple, you want to call this a blonde, either way, it's a damn good beer.
It is.
I love the structure. I was picking up this phenolic spice, definitely getting the hop presence, but now that you're mentioning it, I'm getting more and more of that bitterness. And just to give a little, even though we're not talking about a triple, traditionally the Belgian triple, 9-ish%, golden strong ale, has the biggest hop bill of any Belgian Trappist beer.
Right.
So that's not out of place here, and I find it refreshing. Are you picking up any kind of particular hop profile? Is this old world kind of,
I think it's
noble hops?
It tastes like noble hops to me. They're fairly, maybe there's a hint of grassiness to it, but really it's just a smooth bitterness, really. Yeah. I'd never be able to tell you for sure which hops were used in this, but certainly not any New World hop flavor that I'm getting out of it. What about you? No, I'm definitely getting that. I love the presence of hops, and I've done some videos with Ralph recently, and I'll just give a quick little story. Ralph and you guys put together a beer called Verdant Embrace. It's a New Zealand style IPA. By the time people are watching it might actually already be out. That beer I was so happy with because I was like, oh, there's real bitterness to this. Because so many American IPAs these days are all hazy, and I call them flabby. They have no structure to them. They're just fruit forward.
And so many American versions of triples and quads and Belgian beer are the same way. They have very little structure, they're overly sweet, they're kind of one-dimensional. And I like that I'm seeing more of a shift back to the understanding that bitterness and acidity are two ways to structure a beer and build around it. And this feels very much like an old world example of that shows that you have to have all those components in balance to really be a world-class beer, which I think this is.
Totally agree. Yeah, and I think this is a good example of that.
So we'd like to talk a little bit about foods to pair with. I don't know if you were thinking anything about this. While you're thinking, I will just say, because this reminds me of a triple, I always recommend doing things that are like very spice box oriented, Indian food, Thai food, things of that nature.
I think that would work.
But because this has a little more of that bitterness, you could also add in not just that spice box, but some heat, right? So some chili peppers and things of that nature really make a beer like this pop and bring out some of the flavors in hot peppers, not just the heat aspect of it. You said you agree with me on that?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I think even something like a pasta dish might go really well with this. That just comes to mind for me.
Actually, I mean, maybe something with like I could definitely see something like a seafood kind of cream sauce could work really, really well, or a light, even a heavy like oil garlic sauce could work with this. You have traveled a lot in Belgium. Do you have any particular standouts of any kind of food combinations you had while you were there? Do the Belgians really think about the beer they're drinking and pairing it, or do they just drink about the beer they like and the food they like?
I think there's a little bit of both. I think there's some people that really get into the whole pairing, and there's certain Belgian restaurants that I've been into that on the menu it's specifically recommend so-and-so beer with this dish. So
Okay.
I've had that for sure. But yeah, I mean, there's so much good Belgian food that I love. One of my favorite dishes is beef carbonade, which is a pretty classic dish over there, and I think this would probably go very well with that. So
I don't know what the dish is, but personally, but I just talking about beef. Like some people would say that a light colored beer doesn't go with red meats. I completely disagree.
Yeah.
A beer at 9.5% with this kind of body, with this kind of flavor profile, with the spices and with everything going on, it's absolutely would stand up to red meats with pork, with things of that nature, which makes it so flexible. When we used to do our beer pairing dinners, I loved having our triple because I was like, I can do so much with this. I can pair it with a dessert. Something like this with like an apple pie, like an apple fritter or something like that.
Sure.
Is dynamite. And you could go with Thai food, and you could go with pork, and you can go with beef. So
I think it's a very flexible beer. You could do a lot with this.
yeah, and this is one of those beers, and this is one of those styles of beer that proves how flexible and how amazing food goes with beer, because everyone thinks about food and wine. No, guys, you want to go with food and beer. There's so many things you can do with it. We're biased.
Right.
We're absolutely biased. But I promise you, if you give yourself the opportunity to taste different things, you'll really be surprised about that. But guys, thank you very much for checking in again with us. Thank you, Bill, for coming in and talking about
Pleasure.
2 great breweries and an incredible beer that I am once again shocked. It says year round. This is the beer that I would go to year round. 9.5% in a tall boy can. I want another one. This drinks so well. Please keep telling us what you think we should be drinking next week for Old Favorite Friday. Please poke around on the channel, see other conversations we have about great beers just like this by incredible breweries, and we'll see you next time with Old Favorite Friday. Cheers.
Cheers.